Mel Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion
My
Power
name
Hour.
is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Jazz Confusion Power Hour. I'm Mel Albin. I'm your host, and I'm the founder of the Power Hour. And let me just tell you a little bit about, if you've never been watching the show before, let me tell you a little bit about what the Power Hour is about. You know, a lot of the music that we hear, we don't really know the process that is needed to be able to develop that music. Years of hard work and dedication, the studio time, putting together the right musical components, the right orchestration, creating lyrics that people will remember, and definitely create choruses and hooks that people start humming and singing to. So I want everyone to learn more and more about the artist behind the music, so that you can understand more about the music you listen to and love. So that's what we're looking at. We're trying to get behind the mind. And we've had a series of wonderful guests in the Power Hour, including Eric Robeson, Raheem Devon, Mesa, Annie Lennox, Billy Ocean, Keiko Matsui, Patrice Isley, Ashley Smith, Kelly Finnegan, Dwelle, Reagan Whiteside, Costella, Mavis Swan Poole, Curtis Harmon, Alex Harris, Brian Culbertson, B. Golden. I mean, Blake Aaron, I can go on and on. Terry Woolman, Kanya Das, Jay Brown, B. Valentine. We have had some of the best in jazz and jazz crossover week after week on the Power Hour. And today is no exception. We have another special guest tonight who you're going to really love his music. And he's going to tell you a lot about the years he's put in to be able to create a beautiful body and beautiful works of music that so many people enjoy. So tonight, our special guest is kind of amazing. When he was in high school, he already got the attention of Quincy Jones. I mean, you think about that, being in high school and Quincy's paying attention to your music. After college, he formed an R&B group, and he released an album called "I Feel Like Getting Romantic" on the TRC record label. The album gave the group a top 100 single called "Tell Me Why" in both the country and rhythm and blues categories. One Wish was nominated for a National Music Award and won the best single by a local artist, Metro Times Detroit Music Award. From there, it was off to the races. Our special guest tonight, I want to introduce to you a wonderful musician, composer. I just found out too, originally a vocalist, and also a great guitarist. So please welcome Dee Brown. Welcome, Dee. How are you?
How's it going, Mel? Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm glad you could be here tonight. I don't know if you heard my introduction, but I kind of told everybody about you. For those of your fans that are listening in tonight, and for people who aren't that familiar with your music, they now have some good background I gave them on who you are. I'm going to build that background even more. So I like to start out by asking my special guest the very first thing: what's cooking? What releases you have that are out there, what you're working on, when you're going to be touring, what people can see you. What's in store in 2024?
Well, Mel, we're planning some really nice things for 2024. Right now, I'm working with one of the gentlemen on my label. His name is Rick Habana. He's got a song that we recorded a few months ago. He does have a single out right now. The song is called Moving On. That's going to be coming out sometime, maybe the first of next year. We're working on that. Also, right now, I'm working on my single that's going to be released in, I think it's in June. June, I think June or July. I think it's June or July. And that's going to be a song that's gonna be featuring, of course, myself, and it's gonna be written by my label mate, the great Blake Aaron. He's gonna be producing and writing the song with me. It's coming good. Also, the album that is going to be coming off of, it's going to be entitled Mr. Smooth. So the album already has 2 songs released. The one that's going to be that's out right now is The Thing Is, and of course the one that came out before that is You Already Know. So those are things that we're planning. Later on in the year, somewhere around September, we're going to be doing some performances, and all the performances are going to be scheduled on my website, which is DeeBrown.Jazz.com. So check that for the live performances and all the new release and all the release that we have out right now.
Maybe I missed it. What's the name of the song that you're going to be dropping next month or in June?
Oh, the title, I'm going to give you the title, but this is the working title. It may stay. And a little background about the newest song. Of course, one of my first guitarists that I heard, matter of fact, the very first guitarist I ever heard was a gentleman by the name of Wes Montgomery. So
Oh my God.
he had that style that he uses, that technique called octaves. So in this song, I'm using a lot of octaves. So I want to put the West into it, and because I'm in Detroit, and 8 Mile is like a really popular street that everybody know, I want to call it West 8 Mile, but not for sure, but it's going to be something like that. So right now it's entitled West 8 Mile, spelled W-S.
Terrific. That's great.
Yeah.
One of the things that always fascinates me is how you got into music. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about where you were born and a little about your family and a little bit about the background? How'd you come to love jazz and how'd you come to play guitar?
Okay, well, growing up in my house when I was a kid, I'm talking about 1, 2 years old, my father loved jazz. I mean, he loved the bebop jazz, people like Miles Davis, Charles Mingus, Les McCann. So I heard this music all the time as a kid, as a little bitty baby. And, coming around, I heard like a lot of horns. It was all horns and piano players. And I would hear the bands playing, the bass players and those sort of things. And one day I heard this thing that I'd never heard before. And I said, Dad, what instrument is that? He said, son, that's a guitar. The guitarist that I heard, of course, was Wes Montgomery. On the other hand, my mother, she loved the Motown. She loved vocals. So, we would hear, Marvin Gaye, we'd hear Stevie Wonder, The Temptations, Teddy Pendergrass, James Brown. So I would hear a mixture of that music and, of course, the music my father played. And as I heard the music, I kind of gravitated. I love the sound of instruments playing together. I just adored that growing up. So anytime I heard something live, it really grabbed my ear. So that's really how I became very interested in the music. My father was the one who played it. He introduced me to it. He introduced me to the guitar. First guitarist, of course, was Wes Montgomery, and he introduced me to a whole bunch of guitarists after that. One of my favorite ones after that was Grant Green. Of course, he's a Detroiter.
Oh, sure.
And,
Yeah.
and also Kenny Barrett, and he's from Detroit. Later on, I was introduced to George Benson, of course, and Earl Klugh. So kind of those are like my bases that I started out with.
What in public school, did you play in the band or did you play an instrument?
Well, in public school, growing up in the beginning, when I was actually in like elementary school, we would always sing in class. And there was a teacher she was an elderly lady. And, I growing up and being a little kid, our kids are really mischievous and start running around. And she would want us to sing these songs. So she would give us the music and, we knew the songs already. They were very simple. We already knew them, but nobody would cooperate. And I looked at it like, okay, I'm going to sing the songs just because she wants me to. And I like music all the time. So I'm just singing along with her and she's playing it. So I kind of started in elementary school. And then once I got out of elementary school and went into junior high, they had like the Glee Club. And believe it or not, when I was singing in the 7th grade, I had a first tenor voice. First tenor. So I was singing first tenor with the ladies and stuff. And I thought it was odd, but it was cool. But then all of a sudden it dropped. and I was no
Okay,
longer.
you gotta tell everybody about it when you get to high school. Quincy Jones. How did this happen?
That was actually that was near the end of high school. What happened was there was a group that I had. The group was originally called Foreplay, and we were based on like the Prince thing. So we were more like the Prince band with the time and the steps and all that kind of stuff. And we ran into a gentleman who was in the in the guard agency, and he did security for a lot of people. So he had, shoulders with a lot of people who were famous, and he had a connection to take the music that we were doing to Quincy Jones. And when
Wow.
Quincy Jones heard it, he decided that yeah, this is something that I really like. I had a problem with the group image, so I didn't pursue the contract and agreement with what they had, but that was the attention that we had gotten. The group was called Foreplay at the time.
What's really amazing sometimes is serendipity. You happen to know somebody who knows Quincy Jones. I mean, you know, I
Right.
mean that's cool. I mean, these things happen sometimes. Did that ever have an impact on you that Quincy Jones early on liked your music? Did that give you any special feeling about maybe this could be a good career for you? Did you think about that or not?
Well, at that time, I really wanted to do music. That was what I really wanted to do. I mean, it was like the beginning. Once you get out of high school, it's like, okay, what are you going to do? And yeah, that's what I really wanted to do. And I thought, music would be a career. I had a mentor that stayed next door to me. His name was Eric McClinton. He had been in the business already, and he had a number one song. It was called Vibrations at the time. The group was called Eric and the Vikings. I think it was on the Gordy or Tamar. I'm not sure which label, but it was one of the Motown labels.
What
And
was
he
his
kind of
first
got
name?
it.
What was
What's
his
that?
first name again? His first
His
name?
name is first name is Eric.
Okay.
Eric Mc, Eric
Yeah.
McClinton.
I thought you said Delbert, so I didn't. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the group was called Eric and the Vikings. The song was called Vibrations. But his mother lived next door to the house where I grew up in. And he would come over there and play the piano. And he was the one who really gave me a lot of insight to the music. He allowed me, he gave me information on ASCAP, BMI, and what songwriting was, and how to read contracts and how contracts go. And this was really a lot of information that people didn't get. And we went in the studio. He kind of guided me through my very first ever recording, and I was playing guitar at the time, and it was a song that he was doing, and it was really amazing. And as the years went by, he was the one who actually guided me through all the pitfalls of
Yeah.
music and the music business and dealing with managers and those sort of things, and what to say and how to say them and how to carry yourself. So he was really a mentor to me. He really gave me a lot of insight. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Mentorship in almost any field is so critical because it cuts through so much stuff that you have to spend so much time on. If it wasn't for the fact that somebody can tell you this is what a contract is, this is BMI, this is ASCAP. If somebody lays this out for you, it just saves you so much time trying to find it on your own. So that's always such a valuable relationship. I kind of a different kind of a question I want to throw at you right now, and then we'll come back more to your biographical past. This is National Poetry Month, and I'm curious, Dee, are there any songwriters, musicians, lyricists who you would say is your favorite music poet?
That's a very good question. Um, the music that I like as far as lyrics go, I mean, many songs are written about relationships, and that's like on the top of what songwriting is about. At least, you know, in the days when I was really listening to, lyrics. I mean, lyrics now are a little, depends on what kind of music you listen to. They're kind of vulgar, but not all of them are. But it's usually about relationships. But the relationship that I like to concentrate on is the relationship with God and with Jesus and and has to do things. And I like William Murphy. He writes some really, really interesting lyrics. Fred Hammond, of course, is from Detroit. He writes really
Yeah.
interesting lyrics. And John P. Key. another gospel artist. So I like their lyrics and what they sing about.
You know, you growing up in Detroit, Motown, it's you had such an advantage over so many people being right in the center of all of this as you grew up. It's the environment you're in oftentimes has so much to do also with how fast you can develop and what opportunities are available to you. So yeah, it's just great being able to have you talk about so many of these people live next door to you that came from Detroit. It's really nice. I want to introduce people to your music, and I want to play your first song. Then we'll go back to talking. I want to get back to your college years. I do have one more question for you. When you were taking guitar lessons, did you learn to read music?
Well, I did start out reading music in the very beginning. I did that. Later on, I continued to read. And in college, I studied music, songwriting, studied flamenco guitar and acoustic guitar and
Oh, okay.
orchestra. So yes, I did. I did learn to read music and write music and those sort of things. Yes.
So you would in college you were really trained in classical guitar.
Yep, I studied classical guitar. My main instrument in college was vocals, so I did sight singing and that sort of thing. I did the
Okay.
guitar as well, but vocals was my main focus. Sight
Gotcha.
singing, you singing, Broadway songs and that sort of thing. Yeah, I know that's weird
Gotcha.
because I'm a guitar player, but my teacher who vocalist, he never knew I played guitar. I never told him that. Because when we were doing songwriting and doing our orchestrations and all those things, we would play the piano. So I would play the piano to work out my orchestrations. I wouldn't even use the guitar. I think I didn't want him to know I played guitar just because I didn't want him to know I was a better musician than what I showed him as I was taking the classes. So but I did pretty good, with it. And I don't know if he ever knew I played guitar. I don't think he knew because I took the class at college. I took the flamenco guitar class in college, so he knew I played guitar. But vocals were my strong point.
Gotcha. Well, let's turn to one of your songs that I want to play. I love the song. It's called "I Will." It's featuring Bob Baldwin. Why don't you tell people a little bit about the background of Remembering You, the LP, and this song?
Yeah, Remembering You is an album that's dedicated to someone who passed, who was very special in my life. I was actually engaged to a young lady. Her name was Shania Edwards. She ended up transitioning to heaven. So this album is actually dedicated to her and the time that we had together. The lyrics, or it's really no lyrics to "I Will," but "I Will" comes off of Psalms 91, starting at 16. And it talks about God and what he means to us if we believe in him. So that's where that came from, because we were engaged, we were planning to get married, and her life was cut short. So I dedicate the entire album to her. And as I was doing that album, I met another young lady. We fell in love, and
Oh,
we actually got so I'm married to a young
wow.
lady, Tony, and she
Wow.
supported me as we were doing that project. And she critiqued it. She's not really a musician, but she really hears really good, and she knows what she likes. So I kind of listen to her. "I Will" actually features a kid named Bob Baldwin. I met Bob Baldwin several years back. We actually had the same publicist, and my publicist asked me. She says, "Do you know a guy named Bob Baldwin?" I said, "Yes, I love his music." She said, "You ever thought about doing any music with him?" I said, "Well, not really." She says, "I'm gonna talk to him and see what he says." So he had a concert here in Detroit. It was with a gentleman by the name of Alexander Zanjek. He does all the big concerts around here in Detroit, and this was in Monroe, Michigan, probably about an hour and a half away from Detroit. And he says, he calls me up on the phone. He says, "Dee Brown, I need a guitarist. Can you play?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Okay, and I said, "Okay." So he sends me the songs, and they're all on tape. No, nothing written out. I'm like, "Okay." And he says, we go on at such and such, be there by this time. I said, okay. And I'm thinking, well, we're going to rehearse. No rehearsal. You just get up there and play. He says, this is what he says when I get up there. He says, if you get lost and you don't know yet, just stop playing and come in where you know. And I asked the band when they got there, I said, you guys rehearse? They laughed at me, saying, no, man, we don't rehearse. So we got up there and we had a fantastic show. He let me kind of really, he gave me solos everywhere. So I was really kind of showing out. He gave me that chance to really show the crowd that, you know, I played. And I was doing more of a rock and roll kind of thing, but I played a little jazz too. So when this song came up, it was written by myself, a gentleman by the name of Valdez Brantley. Valdez is my producer. He produced several songs on almost every album except for the very first one, and came up with this idea. I loved the transitions and the different parts that he put in it. I brought it to Bob. Bob said, "Hey man, I can do something with this," and we decided to record it. And the song is called "I Will," featuring Bob Baldwin.
Wonderful. We have a comment from Eloise Rachel saying, "Great show. She's really enjoying how you're talking about your development as a musician." So thanks, Eloise, for checking in. So let's play the first song tonight. From Dee Brown. It's a wonderful song, and it's called "I Will." And so we'll start that off right now. Sorry about that, Dee. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Do you hear me, Dee? Okay. I want to make sure you hear me.
Loud and clear.
I have another comment.
Yep, I hear you. I hear you.
People love the Power Hour, so that's always good to hear. Thank you, Heather. I appreciate it. And we have a great guest tonight, so enjoy the music. Okay.
Excellent.
So let's talk a little bit more about your background and that's a beautiful track. I love that sound.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you do all the charting and scoring? Do you do the illustrations, or do you have a music director that works with you? Or does Blake do a lot of this for you? I mean, how's it put together?
Well, that song was written originally. I came up with the idea. Then I talked it over with my music director, who was Valdez Brantley. Valdez, he's played with everybody from James Brown to Mary J. Blige. He was the music director for Usher for years. And he's actually, I've thought about this, just hit me when we were growing up as kids coming up, and I was a singer. He used to come with me when I went to like weddings. I would sing at the weddings, or I would go to like parties, and he would play the music behind me as I would sing. So we've been together for a long time. But he became like a really great sideman. So I had an idea. I showed him the idea. He came up with some other parts, and he's a programmer, so he can program the bass, program the keyboards and the drums and all that stuff. So he puts the whole song together, and then we kind of decide what parts should go where and how long they should go or what should be changed. And then we sent it off to Bob. Bob heard it. He liked it, and he made some changes to it as well. And then after that, we had the live musicians come in and play it, and we played it down. That's what you heard.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of recording artists they have a different way of putting it together. Even when you have vocalists, I've watched some band leaders who have a vocalist. He'll have the vocalist sing one measure. He'll never give the song in advance. He'll have us sing one measure, and then they'll record that measure 10 or 15 times, and then he picks the one that he likes the best, and then moves on to the next measure. So I've seen it done piecemeal. I've seen bands come in after the fact. Bands come in and help construct the song. So I always like when we have guests on to explain how they go about the process of creating music. So I obviously you're involved from the ground up.
Right. The idea, the very first idea was me. Now, I would tell you this, and this is FYI, I don't even know if anybody even know. The reason I came up with that line that you hear, the chorus for that song, I was in the process of learning the song called Spain. I don't know if you ever heard it too, by Chick Corea.
No.
And
Yes.
Right. And if you notice, the first part of it kind of sound like Spain, and that's where I got the idea from. And then I just blossomed from, So Chick Corea, thank you very much. I know he's gone to glory as well, but he was a very inspiring artist. I loved his group when he was with Return to Forever. They had Stanley Clarke in there, Lenny White, and Albin Miola, and they were awesome, and that really inspired me as well. So, yeah, thank you, Chick Corea.
See, that's great. Now, see, that's something I wouldn't have found anywhere, and people wouldn't have known. So when you're sampling Chick a little bit there, and that's great. That's great. So tell me, Dee, when you talked a little bit about college and you pursued music as your college major, and you were a vocalist primarily at the time. After college, you decided to form an R&B band called One Wish. Why don't you tell everyone about that part of your musical development? If here you were out of college, why did you form this band, and what were you thinking? What were you planning to do?
Okay, well, in college, I met a gentleman who claimed he was a songwriter. Okay, and I didn't believe him. He claimed, and I say he claimed because I didn't even know if he had any kind of musical skill. But he was boasting like, "Hey man, I can do this, and I can write a song about anything at any time, right now." Okay. I said, okay, fine. Come over to my house and let's just see if you can. Well, he could do it. He was a very good songwriter. He could write lyrics, and his lyrics were awesome. So I said, okay, let's put some songs together. So we were just writing songs at that time. And then I had a friend of mine whose father was an executive at Chrysler. His father was well off. They had horses and all those sort of things, and they had really beautiful houses, mansions, and that sort of thing. And he asked me, he says, D, that's what he called me, D, can you guys put a record together? I said, yes, we can. We just need financing. He says, oh, that's no problem. How much you need? So what he did was he showed us something very significant. He showed us how to put a business together and also put it together so that we had stock and we could get people to buy in on the stock of the company that's starting out, and we would use that money to finance our business. But of course, he was the very first one and he put in the most, but he showed us how to do this. So he showed us how to start the business. So we started a production company and a record label. We put the first song together. The very first song we did was the song Tell Me Why. His son was the lead singer. His real name was Demetrius, what was his last name? Carter. That was his name, Demetrius Carter. He changed his name to Avery Midnight. He wanted to have an exciting name. So Avery Midnight is what he went. And the guy had a beautiful voice. The guy who was the songwriter, his name was D'Angelo Webster. He was a songwriter, but he had a brother named Venturi Gaddis. Now, all these guys are Detroit guys, and Venturi and D'Angelo are brothers. Venturi had like a really nice first tenor. Matter of fact, one of the best first tenors I've ever heard in my life. He was up there with Philip Bailey, but he could sing baritone and he could sing bass too. So he was a very versatile singer, a very good versatile singer. And I did like the second tenor, but I was a musician. I was the only musician. And this is something real significant, Mel. I don't know if anybody ever heard of this, but at the time when I was playing guitar, there was a device that came out called a MIDI guitar.
Right.
MIDI is a thing that they invented for keyboards, where keyboards you could play the keyboard, but the sounds that came out were like synthesized sounds or guitar sounds or bass sounds or piano sounds or organ sounds. But they gave the guitar the ability to do this. Okay. And I always saw keyboard players do this. And I said, well, man, I can do it now on the guitar. So for the whole album of I Feel Like Getting Romantic, I was the only musician. I played the guitar, I played the organ, I played the grand piano, I played the electric piano, I played the drums, all on the guitar. It was amazing.
So you did a Prince.
Well,
you did a Prince.
All in MIDI, all on the guitar. I didn't play piano.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, played all
That's
the
cool.
parts down. Yep. And also I sung all the backgrounds. Now we could sing background, but the blend wasn't really good. It was okay, but it wasn't good enough to be a record. So I sung all the backgrounds myself. I guess that's sort of like Prince. He did all his backgrounds.
Yeah.
A lot of people do. And the song that came out was again, Tell Me Why, and it featured the group. The group was called One Wish. There is a song that's on the internet now. You can see the group perform. It was called I Feel Like Getting Romantic. So if you go to like YouTube and you put in One Wish, I Feel Like Getting Romantic, you can see a little taste of what we had to offer at the time. So that's what I did. I did it mainly because a friend of mine, father, asked, could we do it, and we did it. After we did that song and the song became in the top 50, we were talking about doing more and maybe supporting the record. But the lead singer, who was the son to the guy who actually got our business going, he decided he no longer wanted to do R&B music. He wanted to do house music. So he says, well, he do house now. So that destroyed the groups. So we disbanded at that point.
Gotcha. So much of this stuff that you develop your musical career is so rooted in Detroit, the Motor City. Here you have Chrysler, and it's just amazing how all the different parts of Detroit come through you. I love the stories. It's great. The next thing you did that I'm looking at milestones that I selected from your career. you started to do something with saxophonist Gentry Shelby, from Shelby Brown. You want to tell everybody about that phase, about what you were doing then?
Well, at that time, Shelby Brown came together. That was a time that I was trying to decide if I wanted to do, singing or do instrumental or do smooth jazz. So that was really my attempt to do smooth jazz in the beginning. Gentry was a saxophonist, and we came together because he was playing at a church, and he asked me to do a song with him. And I told him, I said, well, the main thing about doing a song, it's not so much about doing it, it's about getting it out and getting a soul to an audience of sort. At the time, he was attending a church and he was playing in church. He says, well, if I come out with a record, I know that I can get, I don't know what number he threw out there, 400, 500 people to buy it. He was also a cop in the city of Detroit. He was also a policeman. So he had a large crowd there to actually sell it to. And his father at the time was one of the chiefs in Detroit.
They had to buy it. They had to buy it.
Yeah. So they had no choice. So we decided to put together the album. We actually got signed to a label that was in Detroit, TEG, or they call it TIG Records. And at the time, the song came out, the album, I think it was entitled Miracle. And Miracle was entitled one of the very first songs that came out. One of the songs that came out. It wasn't the first one of the first songs that came out. And that was because his little girl was premature, and she was a miracle to come out, and everything was normal for her. So we decided to name the album Miracle, and that song was called Miracle. So that was the very first attempt. Now I had a deal with a company called DMX and Muzak, so I could run my music through them, and that's the kind of music it was supposed to be. I guess you could call it elevator music. Some people call smooth jazz,
but I call elevator music too. Yeah.
Yep. So they allowed us to release the song, and they released it to their clients, and it became a #1 song. I think it was #1 for like 8 weeks or so.
That's
the first song that came out. And from that point on, Gentry decided he wanted to go solo. So when he went solo, the record label said, if you guys aren't together, then you have no deal. Then he left, and I became solo, and he went solo as well.
Well, let's just, from there, we can kind of segue right into your first solo project, No Time to Waste, on D-Laf Records. That was around 2006, right?
Yes, it was around 2006, 2007. That project came together. I was actually at my church home, which is First Baptist World Changers. There was I was playing with the band there. There's a band leader there. His name, we call him Billy. Billy Caldwell is his name. And I was talking to Billy. I said, Billy, I'm thinking about putting out a smooth jazz record. Well, he said, well, if you do smooth jazz, the church people aren't really going to buy it. I said, well, why not? He says, because it doesn't have lyrics, not lyrics enough to say what you're actually singing about. He says, you're going to have to go out to nightclubs, and you're going to have to go into places where, God is not actually worshipped. And he says, if that's what you really want to do and you're prepared to do that, then go ahead and do the album. Then do what you feel like you're doing. Feel like what you want to do. And I said, okay, thanks. There was another musician in there, a gentleman I grew up with. His name was Gerald Mitchell. Gerald Mitchell was raised in church. His mother was a minister. His father was a minister. And as we were growing up in youth, he was always the best musician. So I was talking to him, and I asked him to produce the record. So he actually produced the album. In his time to produce the album, he was flying back and forth to Japan because he was doing house music. House music was kind of big in Detroit at the time. And so his group was called Los Hermanos. So he would fly back and forth. And the reason we came up with the title, No Time to Waste, he would be calling me. Say, D, I'm coming home, man. We're going to get together to do some more recording. And I said, all right, we can do that. And he come in, he says, we got no time to waste. We got to get right to it. So that was I don't know if that was the first song, but that was one of the songs. Of course, it became the title.
You know,
The band.
Dee, excuse me, I could be wrong about this, but I thought that this was your first solo project, and that you were actually the guitarist, the composer, the producer, and the arranger. I thought that you were really. Am I wrong, or was it somebody else?
It was all, we all collaborated with it. Here's something that I told people, but I don't usually say in an interview. But the whole idea behind that band that put that music together, Gerald Mitchell, Eric Joe, Desi McCullers Jr., we'll talk about him later, and Dave the Painter Henderson, that whole group was supposed to create songs for everybody in the group to become soloists. That was the whole idea.
Gotcha.
It was really a band approach to that very first album. But I knew deep in my heart that we could not stay together. If something's going to bring us apart. And me investing into this project would mean that if the band disband, disassemble, now we're left with nothing. So I couldn't have that happen. So I had to become the soloist at that point. I know that's kind of weird, but that's kind of what happened. We did do concerts together after the first project, and some of the musicians are very close with me, and they helped me throughout all the albums. Like Desi McCullers Jr., you may have heard that name before, or may not, but Desi McCullers Sr. was one of the Funk Brothers, and that did all the background music to the Motown songs. That's his father. So he's from a great pedigree, and his sister is Althea Renee. She's the flautist from Detroit. You may have heard of her as well. So he is one of my very special friends, and I like to try to get him on every project I do. I think he should have his own project out as well. Gerald Mitchell, of course, he's doing the house music, and Dave the Painter, he did a project as well. He called it something about funk. He called it funk. I think he called it funk. I think that's how he called it, something like that.
When you were doing, I'm sorry.
If he heard this, he's gonna laugh. You don't remember the name of the album? But yeah,
when you were doing this album, when you were doing this album, and then immediately after you did a couple more, A Little Elbow Room and Brown Sugar, were you doing any touring or just doing recording?
Well, we always did shows. When the shows were available and they came around, we would do shows. I would do sideman too. I'd play with other groups as well. So I did sideman. I did my thing as well. Yeah.
Who'd you play with as a sideman? Anybody we would know?
Yeah. Being from Detroit, I played with Aretha Franklin. When she
Oh
was
wow.
around. Played with did a tour with Zap, the Zap band, Roger and Zap, did a tour with them.
Yeah.
Of course, I did the Bob Baldwin thing as well. Played with who else did I play with? Who you might know? I played with a bunch of groups around Detroit who you may not know. But those are the ones that are very significant. That I played with.
How'd you get the Aretha Franklin hookup? How'd you get Aretha Franklin hookup? How did that happen?
That happened because of her son. She has, I think, 3 sons. And her son Eddie Franklin, knew Val. Again, we go back to Val, the guy who was my producer. And they had a group. What was the group called? Faces. And Faces became the group that warmed up for Aretha Franklin. And that's how I got the group, because of got the gig.
Cool.
Yeah, because of Eddie.
Again.
But she also she had another son that played with her too. His name was Ted White. I think she was married to Ted White at one time, and that's Ted White Jr. So I knew Ted from. He went to school with me. We went to school together.
Your Detroit connection. That's what I keep saying. I mean, you got everything you can. You got the mileage you could out of Detroit. That's for sure.
I gave it a good shot.
Let's go on. Let's go to the next song. I want to play another song for everybody. I want them to hear your great music. I want to play "Tie the Knot," and that's featuring Lynn Roundtree. Yeah, that's from your LP Deep Secrets. Why don't you talk about that a little bit, and we'll play it.
Okay, well, that song, "Tie the Knot," that really is a bounce off of the album Remembering You, and then of course me meeting my wife today, Tony. Tie the knot. So tie the knot refers to getting married. That's what the song was really about. Now, when you listen to the song, I really love that song called "Funkin' for Jamaica," and I love the player in there, Tom Brown, and I really like that groove. And I talked to Val. I said, Val, you know, we need to do a groove like that, right? And we came up with the groove. It sounded really good, but we needed somebody to play, and we talked about a lot of horn players, and I said, why don't we get Lynn? Lynn is from Detroit. I don't know if you knew that.
I know she is. I didn't know she's from Detroit.
Yeah, he's from Detroit. And matter of fact, myself and Lynn, my very first gig I did as a jazz player with Shelby was in a Catholic church with Lynn Roundtree. The very first gig I ever did. Yep. So I thought about Lynn. I said, oh man, let's see if Lynn can do it. And you know, Val says, okay, man, let's send him a track. We sent in a track. He blew it down, had some fantastic parts. And the song that you hear is Lynn Roundtree and Dee Brown. The song is called Tie the Knot, and he did an excellent job on that.
Okay, let's play Tie the Knot for everybody, okay? Hey, that's a great track. I love that. Are you there? You hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good, good. That's a great track. I love that groove. That really is really excellent.
Thank you very much. And like I said, Lynn did a great job on it. Of course, orchestration by Valdez Brantley. He did an excellent job on all the music, and of course, the arrangement. We collaborated on that.
Yeah, it's I love the orchestration. Who actually did the orchestration on this? Was it you?
No, it's actually Val. Val Val comes up with the because, like I said, he's the programmer. He programs all the music, and and when he programs it, he comes up with some fantastic ideas. He is a creator, and he deserves wider recognition. Is that something to be said? And yeah, he does most of it. And when he comes up with the ideas, every idea does not work, but he comes up with awesome ideas after idea after idea, and we find something that kind of fits in there. Now, Lynn Roundtree, the horn parts that you heard him play, he played those parts. He came up with those ideas, and they just fit in so perfectly. So he's an awesome musician, awesome creator, awesome player. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. One of the things I've noticed that as we've been talking, you always you're in the process of putting together teams, from everything from business to bringing in new musicians, bringing in people like Blake Aaron. You really have a good sense of what it takes to really create the right music, and that's not something everybody understands. And for young musicians out there, I think you can learn a lot from Dee about the importance of making contacts, the importance of understanding, who's capable of doing what to move your career forward. And obviously, Dee, you've spent a lot of time on, assembling the right pieces that can showcase your talent. So, that's an important lesson for young musicians.
Right. I
So,
find that this is a Detroit thing, because we got the cars. Cars have different things that different companies do. You got people to make the seats, you got people to make the tires, you got people to make the hoods, you got people to put everything together. Everyone has something to do, but they don't step on each other's toes.
yeah,
So I kind of brought that to the music. So that's kind of how we do it. We get people in there who can do some things really, really good, and they fit in really good, and we use them. And of course, we compensate them as well.
that's great. I have a question. Considering you've done so many collaborations with so many musicians, if you could
Yes.
collaborate with any composer, musician, vocalist from any period, any era,
Mhm.
who would that be and why? Who would you want to really work with and why?
I like music from way in the back. I like the big band kind of music. There was a songwriter. I guess you call him a songwriter, musician. His name was Eddie Jefferson. Eddie Jefferson is a vocalist, and he would take and this is amazing. If you ever get a chance to hear any of his songs, what he would do is he would take the bebop songs and take the melodies and put lyrics to them. He was also there with King Pleasure. Now, King Pleasure was back in like the 30s, I think, something like that. And King Pleasure and him almost sound exactly the same. But I really like what he would do. I also like the orchestration and the songwriting, and how someone would take another person's song and recreate it to make it even better than the original, or maybe that would be something that's debatable. Someone like Luther Vandross. Luther Vandross, to me, was one of the best singers ever. I mean, I know we
Yeah,
got Stevie and we got Marvin, but
no,
Luther, I
really
mean,
special.
Luther would take a Stevie Wonder song and he made it really, really good. And was it just as good as Stevie's? That's a debate, but it sounded great. Creepin', he did the song Creepin' that Stevie did originally. And he did a song by Marvin Gaye. Don't you remember you told me you love me, baby? That's Superstar. I think it was originally done by
Superstar.
Marvin Gaye.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really liked his creativity, and he would use other musicians to create, the background music and everything like that. So yeah, that would be great to collaborate with, and I noticed I named vocalists. I didn't name musicians.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many, because of Luther's music, so many babies were made.
That's probably, yeah, he had that mode. I mean, I love what he did. And not just him. I did really like Teddy Pendergrass, and his delivery.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
His delivery was awesome. He and my wife loves Teddy, so we hear that.
How about I'm just curious. How about Barry White?
Yeah, she loved Barry White too, because he had that baritone, that deep bass kind of voice.
Yeah.
And not a whole lot of singers can use that voice.
No, that's why I thought of him.
Yeah, he was awesome, especially with the orchestration, with the violins and violas and the orchestra, I should say, behind him. He did an awesome job with that. It brought those two together, and it just was perfect. Yeah.
Let's play the last song of the evening. Then I want to ask you a little bit about what's next for you. You've done so much. What's going to happen in the next 5 years? But for now, let's talk about one of my favorite songs that you've done. I think it's your most recent release. The Thing Is.
Right. The Thing Is, that song was originally created by Valdez, myself, and Blake Aaron. We all three of us collaborated on that song. I love collaborating with people, as you can see. And
Yeah.
I think almost every song, there's only a couple songs I've written by myself, but I usually collaborate a lot. I bounced this idea off of Blake, and Blake had some really great input in it. He thought that we should add some horns to it, and we brought in David Mann to do the horn arrangement. He did a great job. We brought in Mel Brown to play the bass. Awesome bass player. I love what he did. And Tony Moore on drums, Tating on keyboards. And when I first heard the song, at first it was kind of cool, but then when he put the horns on it, I thought, oh man, this is really, really nice. So this is the latest tune. It's called The Thing Is. Take a listen to it. Hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, let me just say this to you, Dee. I love the music you've done over your career, but it keeps getting better and better. And I think this song is right now, it's a capstone. It's a phenomenal piece of music. So let's play it for everybody so they can hear.
Thank you.
The Thing Is. Oh, Dee, that is spectacular. I love that track. I must have played that about 50 times today. I really love it.
Hey, we're back.
Yeah, I must have played that track 50 times today. I listened to it all day. I love that.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate that.
Well, look, we have to wrap up now. It's been a real pleasure, having you on the show tonight. Maybe you could just tell everybody, I'm just curious, what's next for you over the next 5 years? Where do you see your music going? You've taken it in so many different directions. Where do you see it going now?
In the next 5 years, well, playing the guitar hasn't changed ever. I mean, the only thing you can do is get better at it and a better understanding. So I do see myself playing the guitar, but I do see myself branching off into more vocal stuff because I start out being a vocalist. I want to bring in some vocals a little bit more, and to the tour that's coming up, I'm going to add some vocals in there as well, so they can get the aspect of singing. As far as the music, if the trend starts to change, I want to ride whatever trend is out there. And when I say that, and I look at artists who've been out there for a long time, I never mentioned the artist George Benson. I've never mentioned him, but George Benson was one of my big influences as well. He's been out since like the 60s, I'm thinking. I
Yes,
don't know how long.
yes,
How did he
yeah.
stay out so long? And he's still touring. The only reason he's not touring now because he's having some health issues. But all through his career, he changed as the music changed. He just kept continually changed. He went back to his roots and he started playing the guitar again. And he continued to change as things went on. So I think the whole thing about the music, you have to kind of ride whatever trend is out there. I know a lot of people using the auto tune and the talk box, and I've used that as well. And of course the electronic drums as opposed to the real drums, and I've done that as well. So it's just about changing with whatever comes out new and not being stagnated and staying to your, hey, I got to do this, I can't do anything else. And so I want to be a little bit pliable, with the music as it changes and changes into whatever it changed into, and try to adapt it and bring it into the music that I'm doing at the time.
One of the things that I've been seeing more and more is, especially in the UK, a lot of young artists who are coming up. They're not just doing urban music or hip hop or rap. They're actually going back to jazz, and they're doing hip hop jazz, and they're bringing jazz back into a lot of their repertoires. And I just think that a lot of if you look at Bruno Mars, a lot of these guys out there now sample so much of the old school music, and they're bringing it back and they're keeping it in front of people. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I think that your music's going to become vital as time goes on, because I think it's always been there. And I think people are starting to gravitate back. They get bored. They're bored with what's out there. It's repetitious. So
Yeah, I
well,
have
look,
heard that. I have heard that people are, wanting to hear more people actually sing and play instead of hearing everything through the computer. So I guess it's something I want to happen, and I just think for me it's happening too slow. So hopefully it'll pick up.
yeah. Well, look, Dee, it's been a real pleasure having you on tonight. Your music is fabulous. I enjoyed your stories. The relevance of Detroit in your life is just monumental. And I'm glad we're able to talk about Detroit. It's a fabulous place, and it doesn't always get its just rewards, but it has a great musical legacy, one of the best of any city out there. So, thanks so much. And I hope we can have you back again, in the near future. I hope you'll come back and spend some time with us.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I enjoyed it tremendously, and I look forward to doing the next one.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to say good night and welcome everybody to come back next week. Next week, we have a wonderful artist, Selena Johnson. Her dad, Syl Johnson, is a legend in music. And Selena will be our next guest on the Jazz Confusion Power Hour on the Source Radio Network. So I'll just say good night to everybody.